horizon, and just barely shades of light can be seen breaking through the darkness. And he sat up in bed, kind of did this to his beard, kind of like Grandy back there. And he felt heavy. He felt low. And he remembered what this day was, what this day is. And he had questions. What's going to happen? And he turned and he put his feet on the floor and he said, just sit there for a few minutes. And he prayed and he asked questions. What's going to happen? Why this? What are you doing? But I'll get up anyway. He got up, walked over to his son's room. He opened the door, kind of creaked a little bit. The floor kind of creaked. He walked over, kind of rubbed his son's back and said, Isaac, Isaac. His son stirred a little bit and turned his big brown eyes, looked up at his dad. He goes, oh yeah. And Isaac pops out of bed. Oh yeah, we're going on our trip. Isaac loved going on these wilderness kind of trips with his dad. And Abraham forced a smile. He said, yeah, it's time to go. Breakfast was eaten and they walk out, and Abraham's servants had already packed the mules and got all the things together. Usually there would be the ones that would do more of the hands-on chores around the house, his servants would, but they didn't really know that firewood was needed for this trip, at least this much firewood. So Abraham snuck around back and he was chopping firewood. Early in the morning, loaded all up. And they made their way on this 3-day journey. And after a while, Abraham looks up and he sees the mountain way off in the distance, and he just stops. Takes a deep breath. And then he keeps walking. And he keeps walking. And they have father and son conversations. Isaac loved spending time with his dad. His dad just poured his dad seemed to just really intensely pour his life into Isaac, his sons. Like there was something that Isaac was realized, there's something about me. Like we have such a special bonded relationship some of my other friends don't have with their dads. I don't know what it is, but I'm just so thankful, so glad that I have this kind of special, close relationship with my dad. So they continue making their way. And Abraham looks up again and he sees the mountain that's a little bit closer. And then he stops. Then he turns to his servants. And his servants are looking at each other and look at Abraham and say, why are we stopping? We just stopped for lunch back there. Abraham put his head down and he looks up and he goes, you guys stay here. My son and I will go. We'll go together. We'll go alone. Then he says something interesting throughout this whole story, because I think you're kind of familiar with the story that I'm telling. He says something interesting in verse 5 of this passage. He says, we will go and we will come back. Abraham knew what he had to do, and he had questions. Okay, God, I trust you. But how bad is this going to hurt? What about that promise? You see, because years ago, God had come to Abram at that time, and had later changed his name to Abraham. And he came to Abram in his home and said, I want you to gather all your people and all your things. I want you to leave and go to where I tell you to go. And Abe says, where are we going? He goes, I'll tell you on your way. So Abraham obeyed, and he packed up all of his stuff, and he listened, and he obeyed God. This had never heard of God before, never seen God before, but he knew God was calling him, and so he left, and so he obeyed. He just trusted. So he didn't even know where he was going years before. And God said on this way, goes, all right, I'm going to tell you where you're going to go. I'm going to tell you where I'm going to send you. It's a land that's inhabited by other people, not of me, and do not follow me. And your land, their land is going to be your land. And I'm going to make these promises to you, Abram. In fact, I'm changing your name now to Abraham because it's more like me. And I'm going to make these promises to you. These are magnificent promises. In fact, your descendants are going to be, I'm going to give you a son, and your descendants are going to be like the stars in the sky. And on average night, the naked eye can see around 3,000 stars. Now, I don't think Abraham had that number in his mind, but he looked at me and goes, that's a lot of stars. And it was an amazing promise, a miraculous promise, because Abraham was old like Andy, back to him. He was old. That doesn't mean Randy's wife is. It just means Randy.
Amen.
Randy brought the cradle. Abraham was old, and his wife Sarah was old, and they were too old to have a son. But this miracle happened, and Isaac was born, and Abraham was just, God, you did it. So yes, you trust me, and you obey me. I'm going to bless you. This relationship, Abraham, that you and I, God, have with each other, it's just going to get better and better. And the days went on, and Isaac grew, and then he had his first word, which was obviously Daddy. He had his first word, and then he had his first step. And then one day Abraham took him on his first hunt. And then one day Abraham was on his hunt with Isaac, and he said, there's one. And Isaac drew his bow, and Isaac had his first kill. I mean, Abraham remembers these things, and watching Isaac grow up, and then one day God says, I need you to kill him. You know what? I want you to take your son and sacrifice him. See, in Abraham's time, in his culture, child sacrifice was not uncommon. But I can you imagine those questions going through Abraham's mind? God, I thought you called me away from that. Abraham looks up, and in the distance, the sun is much higher. It's on its third day of this journey. And he sees the mountain, and it's very close. And Abraham's been really quiet. And he's just stepping closer to this mountain. And this isn't a mountain that he's wanted to climb. Not this mountain. You know, parents aren't supposed to watch their children die. Especially at their own hand. Right? You know, this is not supposed to happen. It's not supposed to work this way. You ever have those questions? But God, I thought you were always going to be with me, and I don't feel like you're with me now. Where's that promise? Are these kinds of questions? But God, what if this is going to happen? Or what if that's going to happen? Or what if my life falls apart? This painful journey you've got me on, what if it gets so bad that I can't recover? You know, those nasty, negative what if questions. Anybody have, am I the only one that has those? Anybody else has those? Oh, good. I mean, it's not good for you. Good that I'm not alone. I'm so glad you have negative, nasty what if questions. have that question. God, I'm trying so hard to trust in you, but how bad is this going to hurt? How bad is this going to hurt? I can imagine Abraham just being so full of that tormenting question. Why are you doing this? But there was something about God that just kept drawing Abraham closer to him. There was something that Abraham saw. God's like, there's something about you that just draws me close. There's an attractiveness about you that I want to follow you. And I know this is going to hurt, but I want to follow you. And I don't know why you're wanting me to do this. He's my son, and you made this promise to me. But I can't help but keep stepping. How bad is this going to hurt? But I've found you trustworthy so many other times. You're an amazing God, but I don't know about this. And he's probably on the fence a little bit here and said, should I go back or should I stay? But he just kept going and kept going, and that mountain kept getting closer and closer and closer. And it was quiet for a while. It was in the afternoon. Abraham hadn't said much. Isaac hadn't said much. Abraham was just mulling over these emotions, and trying to push them down, trying to keep the tears in, and trying to stay positive, trying to stay strong for his son. And last thing a dad wants to do is to scare his child, much less kill his child. But Abraham figured God's got to do something. God, I know you're a God that keeps your promises, so you're going to do something. And Hebrews tells us that Abraham believed that God was going to end up raising Isaac from the dead. And that was going to be a miraculous thing for Abraham to see, but he recognized, but I will always have that image in my mind of my knife going straight into my son's heart and blood spewing everywhere. I'm going to have the image in my mind of me killing my son. And I don't know how much of that I can. Why are you doing this to me? Why this? And the mountain kept getting closer and closer. And Abraham trying to keep it in. And then Isaac just had to speak up. He had to hear his son's voice. Really? A time like this, right now? And it's in verse 7. In Genesis chapter 22. Check this out. Genesis chapter 22 is in verse 7. I'll give you a second to turn there, because you got to see this. Genesis chapter 22 and verse 7. But Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, Dad? Abraham said, yeah? This is today's version. He said, I see the fire in the wood. Obviously, we're making an offering. And it was probably at that time that Abraham just closed his eyes and goes, no, don't ask. God, don't ask. And he heard his son utter those words. But where's the lamb? I'm not sure what all went through Abraham's mind right there. But I can imagine it's torture, But he lifted his head up and he said, Son, God will provide. That's all. See, because to Abraham, there's something attractive about God that Abraham just kept being drawn to him. And there's these promises that have been made, and God has been so good to Abraham and has blessed him so much. I mean, I'm not supposed to have a son, and you gave me a son. You provided more than I can ever dream of. Even when I tried to provide for, I tried to fulfill your promise to me my own way and got in a lot of trouble through it. And so I didn't deserve you keeping your promise of giving me a son, but you did anyway. Despite my flaws and my failures, God, you provided for me anyway, Abraham is saying in his heart. My son, he will provide. He will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. And the two of them went together, and they began their climb up the mountain. And so are we. We're making our ascent today, folks. We're going to climb this mountain, and it's going to be grueling at times, but the scenery is breathtaking. And you breathe in this cold air, and it just kind of fills your lungs, and you go, wow, man. And there's times you're just out of breath, and I don't know if I can take another step. I mean, my legs are just shaking, I'm aching, and this really hurts, and I don't know how much more I can go. So maybe I can go 10 more feet. Maybe I can just get to there. But wow, God, you're giving more energy than I thought you could. And then there's the times where I just got to sit and stop and take a break. And why is this all happening? That's ascending up a mountain. And that's entering a trial in life. That's suffering. That's going through suffering. I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. Maybe I can just get through the next day. Or at least I can get through the morning. But, oh man, God, you've given me more strength. I'm having a good day today. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Why are you doing this to me? Sounds like suffering, doesn't it? That's suffering. You think Abraham was suffering? Yeah. Abraham was suffering. And he's climbing his mountain. Two of them went up together. And they're stepping. And they're stepping. And they're stepping. When we were climbing Mount Hood, there was a technique that you use when you're up in higher altitudes. It's called pressure breathing. Because when you're in, how many of you have been in high altitudes before? Okay, what do you notice when you're in higher altitudes? A lack of oxygen, breath. It's harder to breathe. There's a lack of, the air is thin up there, and so it's harder to breathe. So imagine if you're exercising, and then all of a sudden the air is just kind of sucked out of the atmosphere, and there's a whole lot less of it. And you're like, oh man, what's going on? This is, and what happens in altitude is your blood begins to thicken. Your body tries to compensate for the lack of oxygen. Your blood needs oxygen. I don't know if you knew this, but you need oxygen to live. And so your blood needs oxygen. So your blood starts to thicken to try and compensate for that. And then your heart is just working overtime. And so it's harder to pump the blood up into your head. And so a lot of people, when they get altitude sickness, they get kind of dizzy and they kind of nauseous. And my mom, when she gets altitude sickness, she looks like she's some drunken sailor. She's going on the wall like this. Hey, Jack, and it's not that bad, but some people are affected different ways. And it doesn't matter. You can be in the tip-top shape and have altitude sickness. I took a youth group snow skiing one time, years ago, and three of my top basketball players, high school boys, they were in better shape than anybody. They couldn't lift their head off the pillow. They had such bad altitude sickness. It affects your head, and your blood didn't go up to your head as much, and your heart is. So what we're doing is when we're stepping up this mountain and you're tired and you have to pressure breathe. And pressure breathing is pushing blood up into your head so you can keep going. And it looks kind of silly, but this is what it looks like. You actually you take a step and you pressure breathe and you rest. Take a step, pressure breathe, rest. Take a step, pressure. So it's like this. So you have to breathe real hard. It's looks like, that's dumb. I ain't doing that. You guys look like idiots. So he went for a while without doing that, and he started getting a little lightheaded and headache. And, okay, this may look silly, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then he started feeling better. Then he started passing us up. Pressure breathing really works because the altitude is sucked out of the room. Gosh, I remember like it was yesterday at Texas Children's Hospital. That doctor saying, "I'm sorry, there is nothing else we can do." And it was like the oxygen was just sucked out of the room. And I couldn't breathe. That was it. Life is forever different. You know, suffering is just stupid. I'm just being honest with you. It's stupid. I mean, what's the point? Why do we have to hurt? What's the big idea of suffering? I hate it. It's really there's no purpose in it. What's the point in hurting? Here's Abraham, and he's stepping up this mountain, and he's got his son at his side. He's probably, I can imagine him holding his hand, pulling his son up to the top of this mountain where he's going to kill him. And every step, Abraham is getting closer and closer to his son's imminent death. Every step, it's getting worse and worse. But there's something here that I want you to see. I want you to, if you have a pen, and if you're into underlining or circling or making notes in your Bible, there's two words that I want you to underline. One is in verse 3. I want you to notice something about Abraham that I want us to adopt. Because we're all in search for hope, and Abraham seemed to have a hope, and he didn't seem to have this weak anticipation of something that may or may not happen. He kept climbing. He kept climbing. He didn't go, I can't do it, and go back down. He kept climbing. There was a hope about Abraham, and every step that he took, I'm convinced it did something in Abraham that his hope got stronger and stronger and stronger. The first word I want you to underline is in verse 3, the word early. So Abraham rose early. I hope you have it in your version. I do in mine. If you don't have it in your version, mine's better, obviously. Yeah, I'm just kidding. So Abraham rose early. Circle, underline, put stars, asterisks, whatever by the word early. The reason why is because Abraham didn't sit up in bed that morning and shake his head and lay back down and say, just a few more minutes. You know, like you guys do every school morning. This morning?
Yeah, I did that.
But Randy was making pancakes and sausage. That should have popped you out. You were tired?
I slept till it was time to go.
That's not my fault. It's your fault. You shouldn't stay up so late. When the sun goes down, it's time to go to bed. Oh, what is wrong with you people? Morning time is the best time of the day. Am I right? Anybody? Any other morning people? Yes. Amen. You are all godly believers. You are all closer to Jesus than everybody else.
Hey, someone had a flashlight on in that room. Someone did.
I don't, look, I've always had a healthy respect and cherished my brother, my friend Dean, until this weekend. Why in the world did you put me connected to the middle squirrel dorm?
Middle squirrel?
Middle squirrel. That's a squirrel. See, that's how tired I am. Because people, are you in middle school?
No, I'm in junior high.
Because people like her kept me up to 12:30 at night. What about this little boy? Oh, he's cute. That's all I heard till midnight. Okay, 4:30 tomorrow morning, I'm going to go right up to the door that separates us. I'm going to go, hey, are you guys awake yet? I am. Is the best going to go out for a jog? forgot where I was. Abraham did not waste any time. He didn't sit around pondering, should I do this, should I not? He didn't sit at his breakfast and just stare at it for a long time. He didn't go to the firewood and chop one and just sit down for a while and go, no. No, he rose up early and he left. There's another word I want you to underline. I want you to circle. Okay, it's in verse 5, towards the end. It's where he says, I will go yonder and worship. Interesting. I'm going to go worship. They're going to go sacrifice and worship God. And we will come back to you. Remember, Abraham is talking to his servants. And he's saying, Isaac and I, we're going to go and worship. And Isaac and I are going to come back. The we is very important. That's what you circle and underline. We is very important there. Because Abraham had some kind of massive hope that this is going to be okay. We are going to come back. Everything is going to be okay. Abraham was telling himself truth. He was talking to himself, it's going to be okay. Every step, he's going up this mountain. God, I don't know why this is going to hurt, but I know it's going to be okay because you're here. Because you're God. You're here. There's something with those two words that he rose early, didn't waste time, and he went and he believed that everything is going to be okay. Those helped me understand that Abraham had something that you and I need to have in order for us to understand real hope. Not this weak anticipation of something that may or may not happen, but a solid expectation of something great that will come to us. That's biblical hope. And a way to get that is by doing what Abraham was doing, and that is persevering. Persevere. To keep climbing. To keep going. To keep your head up. Setting your minds on things above. And just keep going. God, I don't know. But you're here. And you're God. And I'm not. And you're good. And I know this is going to hurt. But I know it hurts so much more without you. I trust you. I trust you. And every step, he's persevering and persevering and persevering. And he finally comes. Verse 9, then they came to the place which God had told him, and Abraham built an altar there. I'm in verse 9. Abraham built an altar there and placed the wood in order, and he bound Isaac his son. The day he was born, I bet he remembered that. His first word, Daddy. I bet he remembered that right now. He laid him on the altar, upon the wood. That day, that first hunt that we had together. I wondered if he remembered that. Those fun talks. And he stretched out his hand and he took the knife to slay his son. Daddy, where's the lamb? God will provide. And you know the rest of the story. It's right there, chapter 22. The angel of the Lord, pre-incarnate Christ, stopped him. And he said, You did it. I'm not going to make you kill your son. I just want to know if you really trust me. Do you trust me this much? And now I know that you do. And because you trust me, Abraham, there's going to be some massive gifts I've got on the other side of this experience. Massive gifts. Abraham, do you know, remember when I promised you that your descendants from Isaac are going to be like the stars in the sky? He goes, I'm going to do better than that, man. Your descendants are going to be like the sands of the seashore. It's going to be like you can only see so many stars, but you can't, it's immeasurable the number of grains of sand along the beaches of the entire world. I'm going to bless you more than you can imagine. In fact, Abraham, because you've done this, I want to give you another amazing gift on this side of trusting me. Another incredible gift. Your descendants are going to be a fantastic army of people that no enemy is going to be able to overcome as long as they follow me. They're going to, God told him really basically about what Joshua is going to do in conquering all the land, the nations of the land, and you're going to have that land. Man, because you trusted me. You persevered. And I know there's several of you sitting there right now. And I don't know if you're going, man, I can't wait to go to the theme park. But you're suffering, aren't you? There's things you're suffering with. I don't know. It's like Dean said last night. I don't know you. I don't know your story. But I know you're human. And I don't know whether it's something at home or something at school or maybe something here in this group, whether it's relationships, because that's where most suffering comes about. Because seriously, it's in the Bible somewhere, where three more gathered together, there will be conflict. It just happens. You know, I mean, but you're suffering. And what you want, you feel helpless and you feel hopeless. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? See, now we're climbing. Now we're climbing. You feel hopeless. And you no longer want to, I know what you want. You want real hope. I want something that I know is going to happen. I want something I can grab onto that is good, that I know is going to happen. God, what are your promises to me that I know is going to be? Hey, somebody look up Colossians chapter 3 that we looked up last night. Colossians chapter 3. Quickly. Faster. Sword drill. First person who gets here, stand up. Are you serious? Dang, good. Wow. Oh, well, you have tabs. Oh, come on. Cheater. Here's a promise that, what's your name? Olivia. Well, I have a niece named Olivia. We call her Liv. Anybody call you Liv? Yeah, Liv. Really? It's good to call you Liv, or else they call you Die. And that just wouldn't be, live or die. It's not funny at all. You should see the look on her face. She was like...
Or you. Okay, stop stealing John's whatever he does. I probably will get an idea. Don't test me, Olivia.
So I want you to read, where is it? 3. I want you to read. Okay. There's a promise found in verse 4. Liv is going to read verse 4. Because we talked about, for you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. Now here's the promise. She's about to read your future. I don't know if you knew this or not, but she's going to tell you your future. You should charge for this. Okay, verse 4. Read it. Listen, guys. Listen. Go.
When Christ, who is your life...
Wait. Go.
When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory.
That's your future. When Christ, because you are hidden with Christ in God, when Christ appears in glory, he's not going to be by himself. You and I are going to appear with him in all his glory. What is that going to look like? What is that going to feel like? But that's your identity, and that's who you are, and that's your future. That's a promise. That will happen to you. And if God has that much authority and power and love and grace and might to make that happen in your future, what can he do in your suffering tomorrow? Who says it's not going to be good? Why can't we believe the best? Who tells you you have to believe the worst about your future? Just because you feel bad now. Who's telling you you have to think the worst and prepare for the worst and believe the worst? Abraham didn't. If Abraham was in this room if Abraham was in this room today and he was telling you his testimony, I know he would come to the point where he would look at every one of you and you would say, keep climbing. Guys, oh man, keep climbing. It gets good. I know it hurts. I've hurt. I've been through it. But he's good. Don't stop climbing. Don't stop climbing. Persevere. Because your perseverance does something to you, folks. Anybody can give up. And when you give up, you lose. You persevere. There's something incredible God has got for you on the other side of that experience. Persevere. Don't stop climbing. Father, you give us the strength to persevere. We can't do this on our own. This is nothing that I can muster up within myself. I can't. Even if I could, it may be for one step and then I fall. But you give me a strength. You give me your promise, even in the midst of my suffering, your promise that your grace is sufficient. It's there. God, I confess to you now in front of all my brothers and sisters, I confess to you my sin of not looking for your grace. I'm not setting my mind on things above for your grace, but I try and find something to relieve my suffering now. And all you're wanting me to do is just experience your grace. I would never experience the amazing grace of you if I didn't suffer. I would never experience the beauty and the wonder of persevering despite my pain if I didn't keep climbing. Father, you don't give us permission to give up. You give us power to persevere. Lord, I pray for every human being in this room that we would all understand and embrace this moment right now, to surrender our anxiety, to surrender our fears, to surrender our anger and our bitterness and our what ifs and our negative questioning and go, God, I don't know, but I trust you. Because I know, Father, you give us the grace and strength to keep climbing. And I know something good is going to happen tomorrow. Or else I'm talking to thin air. Amen.